This is how to create a moment, ensuring that your guests will have a memorable experience no matter what happens on the tour. We often assume that defining memorable moments are accidental luck, something so special that it couldn't have been planned. But what if I told you that special moments can be prepared ahead of time and, in fact, reused again and again and again? One of my favorite books is The Power of Moments by Chip and Dan Heath. I talk about it a lot. The book basically covers why certain moments have more impact than others, how to create moments, and how to use them to your advantage. While the book isn't written about tours or tourism in general, I found it to be an incredibly helpful tool in giving experienced creators and guides the power to control the outcome of a tour, which is huge. In it, the authors cite the peak end rule, which I've talked about before, but just to summary, it basically is a study that shows people only remember certain aspects of an entire experience. They remember the highlights, they remember anything negative, and they remember the beginning and the end. So on a tour, negative moments inevitably happen. There's the guest that annoys everyone, the unexpectedly rainy or too hot or too cold day, bad traffic, etc. The idea is that by creating a few amazing highlight moments, you can control that the overall experience is a positive one, even when these negative elements come up. It's really that simple, just keeping the balance. Defining moments can be built into a tour if you're an experienced creator or if you're a freelance guide working on other people's tours. You can have moments that are flexible enough to use on any tour. So in this, I will cover the 4 main types of moments that the book, The Power of Moments, defines, with some examples of what they might actually look like on a tour. So these are the types of defining moments that your guests are most likely to remember. 1. Moments of insight. These are the aha moments. It's showing guests something that opens them up to a completely different way of thinking, living than they were before. So, for example, there's a New York City immigration history tour in New York City, and the guide spends the whole tour talking about the good immigrants, right? The Italians and the Irish and the Germans who came in the early 1900s to the city and worked hard to become Americanized. They also point out on the tour, it's a food tour, so how all of the famous New York City food comes from these immigrant groups. So hot dogs, pizza, pretzels. So it's very throughout the tour, guests are like, yeah, these immigrants were amazing. They came and they gave us so much, right? But at the end of the tour, the guide subtly pointed out that New York City is still changing every day with new immigrants coming in. And now this is a very politically charged topic in the US, where new immigrants aren't looked on as favorably as the immigrants in the past who everyone descended from. So the moment of insight on that tour is that aha moment when a guest might actually change their opinions on immigrants after connecting today's immigration to the immigration of New York City's past. It is important to mention for this one, rarely is a moment of insight a fact. Okay, it could be the most amazing, most interesting fact, but that's not going to be enough. It's not going to be extraordinary enough for guests to have their life changed by knowing that fact. They're not going to go home and repeat that fact to everyone they know. This has to be next level. You're really opening their eyes to a larger concept. Number 2, moments of pride. This is something that the guest is proud of and tells everyone about when they got home. Right? Like, wow, this happened and I want to boast about it because I'm proud. This can include something as simple as a celebration of milestones, like birthdays or anniversaries. These are super easy to do. So for example, on a tour, let's say you run a beer tour and you visit several stops and you get beer samplers, right, at each stop. If it's someone's birthday on your tour, you can easily just make a birthday toast at every single bar you go to. So again and again, everyone's wishing this person happy birthday. And maybe you bring in the other guests if they are from different countries by having them do the toast in their language. So now this person gets a happy birthday in all these different languages. very memorable, right? The moment of pride, obviously for the guest whose birthday it is, they're proud to get that recognition and it feels like a celebration. But this is also a moment of connection, which we'll get to, as all the guests are participating in these birthday wishes. So they feel connected to this person, and that's memorable as well. Number 3, moments of connection. Tours are naturally social, so you kind of automatically have a connection added in there when it's a group setting. But on a tour, to give an example, there's a great tour in Krakow, Poland, where it's a home cooking tour. So you go to a local market, you buy ingredients, and then take it to the guide's home and learn to cook. So at the market, the guide actually teaches the guests how to order in Polish and makes them go up to the vendor to order. So they'll order a pound of potatoes or whatever it is. And of course, the vendor already knows what they're going to ask because the tour runs regularly. So even if their Polish is terrible, they pretend to understand them and give them the order. So the moment of connection on that is obviously the guest getting to interact with that local. And it's even more heightened because it's in a local setting, right? You're not just at a tourist market. You're at a market where perhaps the vendor doesn't speak English. So you're communicating with her in your language. This is also a moment of pride as the guests have to practice that Polish and get the satisfaction of the vendor in understanding their Polish, right? And also a moment of elevation, which we'll talk about in a moment, as you visit a local home. And that's it's as good as scenery, right? To be in a real local's home and to look around and see their pictures and things. Okay, number 4, moments of elevation. Now, there are several different types of moments of elevation. So the first is raising the stakes. Raising the stakes adds an element of productive pressure. So a competition, a performance, a public commitment. You don't want to stress your guests out. That will be a negative memory, most likely. So on a tour, let's say you're doing a multi-day trip in Italy and you pass by Verona, and you have a couple on your trip that is celebrating their wedding anniversary. So maybe when the group gets to, Juliet's balcony in Verona, that normally groups just kind of look at and then move on, maybe there the leader arranges for an impromptu wedding vow renewal of this couple underneath Juliet's balcony. So the moment of elevation is, making their celebration public, right? Because they're standing there in front of the rest of the group, in front of other tourists that have gathered there. It also elevates their expectations as, at most, maybe they were kind of thinking they'd get, a champagne toast at some point during the tour because they told everyone it was their anniversary. They certainly weren't expecting to renew their vows in a public way. This is also a moment of connection, right? If you involve the other guests in your group, so maybe you make them bridesmaids and groomsmen. And this is also a moment of pride because you're celebrating a milestone, right? So the more elements you have to a moment, the more impactful and memorable it will be. Another type of moment of elevation is called boosting sensory appeal. So this is pre-built into some of tours already. So if you're taking a hike through the beautiful scenery in Mallorca, or if you are, walking over the Charles Bridge in Prague, or even amazing panorama, those are already built in. They're already there. But you can build them up to make them even more special. So, for example, I once took a tour in Moscow that visited a Soviet-era fast food restaurant. And the guide, instead of just opening the door and walking us down in, the guide boosted the sensory appeal by opening the door, which revealed kind of like a dark cement staircase going down, no signage at all. I didn't know what this place was. And then the guide, in their thick Russian accent said, "Welcome to Soviet Russia, after you." And then made me walk down the staircase first. And that, that really boosted the sensory appeal because it was kind of dark and a little bit creepy. And now she's talking about Soviet Russia, and I'm going down. It's a little bit nervous. So it definitely boosted the sensory appeal when she could have just walked me into the restaurant without mentioning that or calling attention to the fact that the staircase was a little bit intimidating. This is also a moment of breaking the script, as you're expecting a typical fast food restaurant, not a dark, scary staircase, and a moment of pride, because I had to walk down those stairs first, and I was a little nervous, but then I came home and I would tell this story to people, because it was, I was very proud. Like, I was like, all right, I'm going to walk down the basement into Soviet Russia. That was such a memorable, like, that's what I remember from that tour, walking down that staircase. It's really interesting what guests actually remember. And the last one, moments of elevation, is called breaking the script. So this is strategic surprise, right? To do this, you must first understand what the customers expect, obviously, and then give them something different and better, obviously. So on a tour, let's say, for example, it's a music tour in Puerto Rico that ends with a salsa lesson in a local bar. I've taken a few tours where there's, a dance lesson, and it's usually, my expectations would be you go, it's probably empty, you learn a few basic moves, and then that's it. The tour is over and you go do something else. However, on this tour, they've timed it so that when you finish your dance lesson, let's say the live band is like ready to play in the next room and people are already coming in, and the salsa instructor has actually arranged for regulars who come to the bar to dance to like come over and ask you all to dance, to show off your dance moves. So that's, wow, you weren't expecting that, right? It's breaking the script of how you thought the tour would end. You didn't think it would end in this amazing local dance party. So that's the moment of breaking the script, right? This is also a moment of connection. Again, guests interacting with locals by dancing with them, and a moment of pride for those guests who are satisfied with their dance moves enough, or at least brave enough to try to dance with locals. It's something they'll come home and tell people about. And that's the goal of this.